more experience of it than anyone else here. Please give a warm welcome to our convener, Lyndsey.
Thanks very much, and thanks to everybody for coming. It's marvellous to see so many people here, and this is obviously the reason for holding this meeting was the release of Joe Glenton, and we'll be hearing from him very shortly. But I'd just like to pay my own personal thanks to Joe, because I think other people have talked about it. Caroline Lucas and other people have already mentioned it. But I think people who do what he did are absolutely exemplary, and we should be very, very proud of them. But also, we shouldn't just be proud of them, we should use their example to make sure that we are going to continue to work even harder to end this war, because this is one of the most horrific wars that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime. There's a man called Des Brown, who some of you may remember was one of the Labour government defence secretaries, and Des Brown said 2 years ago, he said that he thought the war in Afghanistan was one of the most noble causes of the 21st century. Now, I know it's early days yet, but I think we can already say that that was what we said 2 years ago, that this was a pretty ludicrous claim. But I think the WikiLeaks things that have come out today show exactly that this is the opposite of a noble cause of the 21st century. It is a bloody, a dangerous, a sordid war, which, as in all other wars, the politicians, the military and the media are covering up what is actually happening in this war, because if people really knew what is going on in this war, there would be an even higher proportion than the 3/4 of British population who want the troops home within a year. There will be an even higher number of people. There will be an even greater outcry over this war. And one of the things that they've partly succeeded in doing with Afghanistan, in a way that they didn't with Iraq, was to make it look like a kind of normal war. There's always been there, it'll continue for years, nothing much seems to be happening there, all of that kind of thing. I think one of the things that the leaks have done today is to blow that argument out of the water by saying that actually what has been happening is this, that there are more civilians killed than anything we ever heard about. There are snatch squads and terror attacks coming from the SAS, coming from the CIA, who are going around killing people all the time. Supposed terrorists, but actually who knows who the people are that they're killing. That they are bombing the border areas in Pakistan by remote control from Nevada with drones. And it's a fact worth remembering that Barack Obama, who is supposed to be the kind of touchy-feely, friendly American president over these wars, Barack Obama has killed more people in Pakistan in the last year or two than were killed by the Israelis in the bombing of Gaza last year. And while we are quite rightly angry and horrified by what has gone on in Gaza, we shouldn't forget that there is this murder and destruction which is going on in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and that is something we have to speak out about. But the other thing that the leaks today really, really show is that this war is being lost. It seems to me that it is inconceivable now that at any stage the NATO forces and the American and British governments can claim a victory in this war. The choice that they will have is between negotiations with the Taliban and the other people that they talked of as their enemies. It's either a question of negotiations or it is outright retreat and defeat for the British and American forces. That seems to me are the only things that really and what a thing that will be when they have spent all this time saying that the war is about making Britain safer, the war is about human rights, which, as Yasmin has just showed, was another lie that we were told about the war. Won't it be a thing if they do talk to the Taliban, and what that will mean is they will partition the country so that parts of the south of the country will be controlled by the Taliban, which Which government minister is going to say to the families of the British soldiers who died in Helmand and Sangin exactly what they died for? Because the truth is, they are not dying for any noble cause. They are dying for yet another colonial imperial war which Britain has been at the heart of for more than 200 years, not least of all in Afghanistan. Few people today defend the war, although I must say the BBC, should be given, far from being attacked by this coalition government, should be given a medal by the coalition government. I don't know if you heard this morning the reports on WikiLeaks. You would normally have thought that when The Guardian had broken such a big story as it did, they might ask a journalist from The Guardian to come on to their programme. They didn't ask anybody from The Guardian. They didn't ask any anti-war voice that I heard. What they did do, they had two members of the armed forces saying about how these leaks would make the lives of British soldiers and other soldiers much more dangerous. Now this is a lie. How can it be that if you reveal the bombing of a wedding party, or if you reveal that British soldiers just started shooting at Afghan civilians, or all the other things that are revealed in this report, how can it be that that makes British soldiers' lives more dangerous, or anybody else's lives more dangerous? Surely telling the truth about this war should lead to an honest assessment of what the war is about, and then hopefully, eventually enough people will see the need for withdrawal. But the media are lining up to say, either we knew all this before. Well, if we knew all this before, we certainly didn't learn it from most of the British media who haven't been telling us about it before, or else this is something which has made things so dangerous that thousands and thousands of soldiers will die as a result. There is only one reason that British or American or any other soldiers are dying in Afghanistan, and that is because the politicians and the generals do not have the honesty to admit that they are losing the war, and to admit that the only thing they are going to do is to bring the troops home. And that is why it's increasingly becoming like Vietnam. It's increasingly becoming a war where more and more troops are poured in. I mean, after all, Obama's surge, which was supposed to be what was going to happen this summer, has completely ground to a halt, even though there are far more soldiers there than there have been since 2001. They send in more and more troops, they send more and more money in to pay for these wars. You may notice from the coalition government, we're told all the time that nothing is sacred and that we have to be prepared to see hospitals close and libraries close and everything else go and be cut, except for the army, the wars and all the other things where they have spent already on Iraq and Afghanistan. They have spent £20 billion in 9 years on those two wars. And that's not the long-term cost, that's just the immediate cost of doing it. So all of those, it seems to me, are arguments that we have to say why it is the troops should come home. Now, even David Cameron seems to me is coming round to this way of thinking. I mean, David Cameron announced last week that he thought maybe the troops should withdraw.